Okay, this is our second session on the new monasticism. What I want to do this morning is give you a tapestry of understandings of new monasticism. Running through much of what is being said is a leitmotif from Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And there is a quote that's often used. It was a letter that Bonhoeffer wrote in 1932. And this is the quote. "I think I'm right in saying that I would only achieve true inner clarity and sincerity by really starting to take the Sermon on the Mount seriously. This is the only source of strength that can blow all this stuff and nonsense sky high in a fireworks display that will leave nothing behind but one or two charred remains." And then this is the quote. "The restoration of the Church will surely come from a new kind of monasticism which will have nothing in common with the old, but a life of uncompromising adherence to the Sermon on the Mount in imitation of Christ. I believe the time has come to rally people together for this." And so when you look up new monasticism on the internet, you often find this quote more or less used. You find it on our website, the Lindisfarne Community, and it's one of our readings, our meditations in our way of living. The quote was uncovered by Father John Skinner, who is now in Turkey with Emigre Connection, who was an Anglican priest in the 1980s in Northumberland. And John had discovered this quote and then had paraphrased it. And when the Northumbria community began in 1991, John and Andy Rain used this quote as part of the Northumbria community Celtic daily prayer, which I'm sure many of you have seen and used. But they used it in John's paraphrased version. When I was doing my PhD research in the mid-90s, I uncovered it again in its original here in this is the biography of Bonhoeffer by Edvard Becker. And so in my PhD dissertation that was later published as In the World but Not of the World, Christian Social Thinking at the End of the 20th Century in 2000, I gave the reference for the Becker quote. Now what's quite interesting is that you will see the Bonhoeffer quote in many versions. If you see it in the paraphrased version from the Celtic Daily Prayer, you know that the source of that was John Skinner and the Northumbria community. If you see it in the Becker version, that's because either I or somebody else did the research to find the original quote. And that is just a piece of trivia, but it's interesting and amusing, it seems to me. Other things from Bonhoeffer that I would recommend to you if you don't want to plough through the 800 pages or whatever it is of Becker's biography. Life Together, very significant little book. We read it together in the theology school. What happened with Bonhoeffer is when the Nazis were beginning to sweep through Germany in the 1930s, Bonhoeffer, along with other Lutheran pastors, sought to stand against that trend. And so they became the Confessing Church. And one of the things that Bonhoeffer did was he was appointed to be the leader of a small theological college, where he wrote about the experience in Life Together. And what Bonhoeffer did was began to explore a form of new monasticism that he talked about to his brother there. And so what you have here is, in a sense, is Bonhoeffer's rule. This is how Bonhoeffer wanted to do community. And then another book, and I'll mention a couple of things from this, is Bonhoeffer's Letters and Papers from Prison, because he mentions an idea here that has become very dear to me, and that is the idea of new monasticism as a kind of religionless Christianity. Now it's an enticing idea, and he wrote it not long before he was executed, and so never had opportunity to really unfold and explore what he was talking about. But I'll read a couple of little quotes to you. What is bothering me incessantly, and this is in a letter to Becker, is the question what Christianity really is, or indeed who Christ really is for us today. A little bit later, we are moving towards a completely religionless time. People as they are now simply cannot be religious anymore. I think there's some questions about how accurate his kind of prophecy was there. He didn't see the rise of fundamentalism in the 1970s onwards. But then a little bit further, are there religionless Christians? If religion's only a garment of Christianity, and if this garment has looked very different at different times, then what is religionless Christianity? How do we speak of God without religion? In what way are we religionless, secular Christians? In what way are we ecclesia, those who are called forth, not regarding ourselves from a religious point of view as specially favoured, but rather as belonging wholly to the world? And one final little quote. I often ask myself why a, quote, Christian instinct often draws me more to the religionless people than to the religious, by which I don't in the least mean with any evangelizing intention, but I might almost say in brotherhood. Now, remember last night talked about the Catholic ecumenical spirit, and I think that's Bonhoeffer expressing it there, that he was drawn not towards religious people, but secular people, people in the world, and was thinking about and wondering what a kind of secular Christianity, a following of Christ would be like without the trappings of empire in this kind of new secular monasticism. So when John Skinner was studying this in the 80s, he came up with this phrase, secular monasticism, came up with the quote from Bonhoeffer, new monasticism, and actually presented it to the Bishop of Durham, who at that time was David Jenkins. And David Jenkins didn't do anything with it, but John did, and with Andy Rain, and then with others in a group called Northumbrian Ministries, of which I was a part in those days as a Baptist ministry in Northumberland. They formed the Northumbria community. And that was, in the British context, that was the beginning of new monasticism, as we're coming to understand it. Now what I want to do is to give you this